All right. Well, here we are with Dan Lutz for another episode of something I'm calling herding cats, and we're sort of exploring different players' experiences with the Acinonyx cat bass, and so you've been into this thing from pretty early on, I think. So
Yeah.
we'll get into what your experience of that was like. But first, I usually like to start with just tell us a little bit about yourself as a player, what your, how you came up, and maybe what some of your notable gigs are, and how you
Sure.
make a living as a player, even
You
though
know what's
currently...
funny, what you said, the name of the podcast, herding cats. If you don't spell that correctly, with 2020 going on, it could be there's a lot of herding cats out there. And,
right.
So you got to make sure that you got to be clear about that.
Double entendre, yeah.
No, man, it's been an interesting year, but managed to pull through it right now. I usually kind of circle around staying home, doing in-town stuff as a bass player. So I rely on a lot of shows, live gigs, and then recording sessions to make my living. I was doing some touring with Jonathan Butler, who's a great South African gospel jazz artist who I love and is a dear friend. But all his stuff stopped this year. All the touring stopped, so it's completely gone. I was scheduled to be playing Hamilton at the Pantages Theater and Mean Girls at the Dolby Theater all this year, and that all got canceled. So I was really dry for a long time. And luckily, the sessions started to shift. If you guys were set up at home, we could do recording at home. And luckily, I had been very minimally set up at home, and I quickly grew that a little bit. So I was able to do some things. And most recently, I did a lot of remote sessions for Coming to America, the new film Coming to America. So we did that. I did that from home with some cat bass on there.
Oh, sweet.
And then I also did some stuff for Josh Groban recently. Touring, or not touring, but taping a lot of his TV promo stuff for his new album, and some Christmas specials and Thanksgiving specials. So that just finished. In fact, last night, December 20th, we aired on Home for the Holidays on
cool.
CBS. So that was with Meghan Trainor and Leslie Odom Jr. and Miranda Lambert. So really, really fun. I got to play with J.R. Robinson.
Man, yeah. That's a thing, man. That's a great thing. Very cool.
So, and I was loving the StarLifter. I had the preamp. That's just literally the first thing I plug into live and in the studio. I literally get frustrated if it's not with me. Dang it,
that's awesome.
It's become a part of my tone. So I know we're not talking about that, but
that's fine. Yeah.
It's a phenomenal box. Everybody should.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah. I actually, the manufacturer's been like, hey, when are you going to order another batch? So it doesn't hurt to talk about it right now. So I'm all on board for that. So
I actually I was going to text you and ask if you can make an onboard version of that with the switch that would be passive, but without the DI, that would be kind of fun. An onboard vintage and modern switch. And
just the contour section.
Yeah. And the preamp. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
another time we'll talk.
It might be a bit of a trick. Actually, one of the things I'm thinking about doing is adding a compressor to it and making a studio rack version.
See, you're a mad scientist.
So,
that's the best thing.
Yeah, and then maybe getting into some dirt at some point too.
Yes.
Yeah.
That'd be sick. An overdrive circuit or something.
Woo, yeah, I keep looking at it down here on the floor, and I'm like, we gotta work.
Regardless, it's phenomenal as it is. Thank you for making that.
Oh, my pleasure, man. I'm glad you dig it, and I'm glad it worked out. It was working out so well for you, because you were one of my targets, based on what I know about your tone affinity. So so cool. All right. Well, so then tell me about how you came to know and become aware of the cat bass, and then all the way to the point of where it finally showed up at your door.
Yeah.
And what it was like getting to know it as you sort of sat down and started exploring it for real with nobody watching you at a trade show,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've been a fan of your work for at least a decade. So we've had a long relationship of instruments and all that kind of stuff. There's always been one or two Nordstrands floating in my, arsenal at all times. So when you came out the cat bass instrument, of course, I'm like, what is this? It's going to be good. And then I didn't, I had, I was getting more into places where I would need a short scale, but I had never really I didn't really know what they were for or where they came from. I was getting along with the P bass and a jazz bass fine. But what got me was there were several like detail things before I was even interested in getting one. I loved the aesthetic. I loved the lollipop tuners, the reverse headstock, the offset dot inlays, the push button, the passive pickups. Like everything was checking all the boxes. Even if I didn't even want to have a short scale, but I loved the way I'm like, this is cool. I wouldn't mind a regular bass like this, And so, but then like a lot of my friends and a lot of the players in LA started talking about it once I think they got their hands on it at NAMM and different things came out, reviews. But I didn't know I like big chunky basses with wide string spacing. So that was another deterrent for me. Right. So it was going to have to be the tone. And then I think Bob Glaub like messaged me on Instagram or something because I saw his. And he was like, Dan, trust me, you're going to love this. And so I was like, okay. And so I ordered one and it came, and I think I had played one before in a shop, but I was like, oh, it feels like a toy bass, which is what I thought it would feel like. Yeah. But then you plug it in and you realize that there's nothing toy about it in terms of tone and what it can do and the size. In fact, if anything, it's more punchy and clean all the way through the top end as the short scale, allows for, but it's also beefy and you can get huge tones out of it. And so I started playing it on a lot of things. There's an artist named Shoshana Bean, and we did a live stream, and I played the bass on the whole thing. Been doing a lot of like church sessions with it, live streaming church stuff. There's something that just came out that is a Go Tell It on the Mountain version I did with Matt Salee from the Pentatonics. And we did a version of Go Tell It on the Mountain, and I'm playing like this Motown line on, and I'm just getting lost. It's so fun because it just has this P-bass-esque thing, but it can go way left and way right of that. Right. And so the only problem I'm having now is like fat guy, little bass syndrome, because it's just like, it looks so tiny on me, and I feel awkward, but I want to play it all the time. Yeah. It does have a small aesthetic. Yeah, it kind of feels like you're playing a guitar aesthetically, But what's cool about it too is that it's really comfortable. Like I have no problem. Like I'm not missing notes or over fretting or anything. Like it's very responsive and dynamic, like any other thing would be. So it's a joy to play in that regard as well. Yeah, it just seems like you kind of shrink into it a little bit, like come down to it, and then once you sort of discover that new sort of equilibrium, then you could do tons of things on it that aren't quite so easy to do on a lot of other instruments. Great way of putting it. Yeah, I hear a lot of people who say that because it's smaller and faster and easy to play, that they feel like they can do stuff on this bass that they don't really attempt on other instruments. For better or worse. I mean, maybe playing too many notes isn't a great idea, but but like little melodic ideas, I've noticed I've been drawn to that upper register because it's so thick up there, and the tone, the fundamental is so strong. So it makes me want to, like, if we're going to the bridge, I might choose to play like, play something up here because the bass kind of wants it played up there. And it's sort of McCartney, sort of something up there that's really beautiful, depending on the setting, So I'm loving that. Cool, man. Well, so as you sort of got to know it, was there anything that stood out, in terms of tone settings, or was it just sort of a sort of slow, like, oh, that one's cool, that one's cool? I mean, how did what you don't like? Because you were going to ask me what settings I do like. I have it here. I have this. Here she is. She's right on. Yeah. Right now I've got all the buttons pushed in because that's what you do sometimes. So I love that. But I don't like that for when I'm, because it kind of traps me, because then if I go back to a different setting, I have to readjust, because it's
the gain is so different. Yeah.
So, but I don't like it wide open. I feel like, because there's so much warmth in every other setting, that when it's wide open, I feel like the top end's like, oh, I wish I could dial that back a little bit.
Right.
I love the scoop setting for finger style, like traditional.
Cool.
With
both pickups parallel or
yeah, both pickups on, and like that's where I usually start from.
Wow.
And I just love the push button, because I'm not a knob turner, but I do like to have variety. So I don't like to go fishing for something. So the fact that I can just push to the front pickup, or to a bigger scoop, or a more low end boost, is like really fun. So I'll usually start in that scoop setting, and then jump to like the front pickup scoop, and then for the biggest part of the song, I'll literally like push the big boost, the low boost on. So it's fun to be able to do that without turning knobs. You can literally like produce your bass part and tone through a song or live, which you can't do on other basses. So I love that aspect.
Right on. Yeah, that I like to call it a mid notch instead of a mid scoop, just because when I talk about, and I'm not trying to correct anybody or anything, but just the thinking is that a scoop, someone's going to think slap, like, oh, I can slap on it now, it's got a scoop in it. But I mean, you could, but I think the bass sounds best for slap with both pickups on and wide open. And then and then maybe the StarLifter to EQ out some of the mids or something. But for me, that notch is more like a producer mid cut. Like if you want to make the thing fit into a track and leave more room for the rest of the instruments, the notch is a better way to conceptualize it, I think.
That's perfect. Well said. Yes.
and it tickles me. It delights me that you have found that and gotten into it, because that's not super common. At least not that I've heard about yet. I mean, there's 200 of these things out there now, so I haven't heard from everybody about whether or not they're using that. But I'm glad you are, and I'm glad you kind of get what the intent behind that was. In terms of actually producing a bass track just by controlling your frequency response with the switches. That's definitely something that I'm glad you get and appreciate. So that's cool.
I should do a demo that with like a track, like just so people could see. That'd be a fun little like 2 minutes song, and how you use the buttons to change.
Totally. That would be super cool. Yeah, right on. All right, man. Cool. So then what is your absolute favorite setting? You only get one setting on the bass. What is it?
I think it's gonna be, let me see, I forget. Okay, so I don't know the lingo. I'm looking at the bass right now. Both pickups on. And the second notch.
Okay, so the first tone cut. The sort of medium dark one.
The medium dark. So I think that's the one that I start there. Yep.
Cool.
I love that, because it's just got it. I feel like with the mid notch, or the what do you call it? Not the scoop, but the last one.
Yeah.
That one is the most traditional sounding to me, in terms of like, this could be short scale or it could not. But the setting I like with that second notch. It's like, this is not a normal bass, but I love it. It doesn't go and it doesn't overcommit to like too beefy or woofy. So I love that setting, especially live.
It's just kind of right up the middle. It's fat and warm and defined, and right on. Cool, man.
And I have flats on, so I'm coming from that place. And a lot of times, just for technique wise, I usually play back towards the bridge. So I am trying to get that like attack out of it. And so I like to have a little of the beef, because I'm going to lose it with my hand position. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then I can play right over the top, and it gets real big. So
right. That way you have a nice sort of middle ground to start from.
Yeah.
And then you can just technique wise change and get different vibes out of it. Right on. Man.
But I will say, in the studio, like, that's what's so fun. Like, one bass feeling the way it is, allowing you to play like really comfortably with all those tones. Like it's one that doesn't leave my lap very often, you know.
Wow. Right.
A lot of producers and people, what is that? What, I want to hear that. So they're instantly drawn to the aesthetic, as I was, and then the tone just backs it up. So it's fun.
Yeah, well, that was my next question. Is like, what kind of reaction have you gotten from producers and engineers and other players? If you've, I mean, obviously you talked about Bob messaging you and saying, "Hey, check this out."
Yeah, and Tim and I conversation too. I know he's got one, and he was really excited about it. And he's he's got basses coming at him throughout the year, so
he does.
Something grabs his attention. He's great. But usually it's met with like, what is that? And then, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. So I love that, usually, you have an old Fender or something, it's like, oh, that's great, but when something new that has a sort of a throwback to obviously the Panther, and even those in the know, they're like, oh, that looks like a Goya, but most people don't. But most people are still like, whoa, that looks really cool, I bet that sounds great. And then when I use it on tracks, I haven't yet been asked to, can you try something else? Because in fact, I did this one Christmas song for this artist, and he asked me to do upright bass. So I sent him a track of upright, and then he's like, let me hear what it would sound on electric. So I chose the Acinonyx, and and he wrote back, he's like, I'm using that. What was that bass? So that's usually the response, like, oh, that's cool. It's a familiar but an unfamiliar sound,
Right. Yeah, that's so great, because I've talked to Gary Wicks, who's more of an upright guy. I mean, now he plays plenty of electric
He's
too.
Great.
And then Ed Friedland. I've already done interviews with both those guys, and we talked about the relation to an upright sound that you can get out of this thing with that super dark thumpy, especially if you throw a little mute on there too.
I know.
Yeah. So,
and I love that came with the mute. That's like the best. That's the best gift.
Cool. Right on. Yeah. Well, we're trying to get people to buy them, which turned out not to be a problem.
No, they're so great.
Yeah, we have the second batch, 250 pieces coming, hopefully in late January. They should be on a boat by now.
I lost my 19 millimeter in our move for my. Yeah, I know. So I have to order another one. There is so much bass for the money on these, even at whatever full price might land at. It's completely worth it. I wouldn't change or sell this thing. It's just got such a unique place in your library and in your arsenal that it's one of those ones, like, you're going to keep this, especially for it's completely worth the investment.
Right on, man. So cool. Thanks. Well, is there anything else you want to mention about it or talk about, or?
I just was wondering if you were going to make a 5-string version.
Oh, man.
Just kidding. I'm trying to be like all the guys that are, some question can you ask?
Somebody who I think I was talking to, another one of these interviews, somebody brought up the 5-string thing. And so basically my attitude towards that, and I know this is going to piss some people off, but I don't really care. What was that?
I'm asking because I know that it's a hot topic.
Well, I don't think the bass is going to cut it with a 5-string, and then just that's kind of the antithesis of what it's about. It's about pulling people back into the basic 4-string,
yes,
and the joy and the freedom that a small 4-string.
Yes,
I mean, it's like taking the training wheels off that you didn't know you had. You know what I mean? Like it just is so liberating to just play on a 4-string and not have to think about, okay, 5-string.
Yeah.
Or how do I mute that string? It's just an extra thing that you get rid of that. It's a more pure bass experience as far as I'm concerned. So,
I remember reading an article you wrote a long time ago about get past the honeymoon with a bass. It was something like, people will buy a bass and then they'll spend 2 months with it and then they don't like it. And you have to spend time with it. You have to get to know it. And I remember that because I'm guilty of that. I've bought.
We all are. Yeah, totally.
You're trying to find instruments that you relate to, and you change, and the music changes, and your career changes. But one thing that I've learned is that I don't want a bass that can do it all. I love the way a bass makes me respond to it by its feel, its geometry, its weight, its tone, its character, its size. And so I choose basses really. If I need something that's going to slow me down, then I want to have a big chunky bass. If I want something that wants me to be melodic and lyrical, then the Acinonyx or something like that, you know, a fretless, you know, an upright. So it draws something out of you. So to try and make, oh, this would be perfect if it was a 6-string or if it was 24 frets or no, it's perfect because it brings you to it, you know, and not you trying to, you know, your art and your voice will come out through this tool. And so, and it'll come out in a new way. And that's what's to be celebrated and sought after.
Yeah. And I mean, that kind of goes to the ethos behind the instrument as well, in terms of this is not a one bass. It really was designed with an intent for kind of one approach, you know, this sort of old school sound that feels like it's been around forever, you know, like this tone. And I mean, aesthetically, it's unapologetic in terms of the 1 and 3 reverse headstock and some of the other choices, you know, and to me, that's where the character starts to really come through an instrument, is when you make choices that are unapologetic about, you know, this is what this is, you know, and it, anyway, I'm glad that worked, that you get that, and that
it translates.
I think a lot of people are picking up on that with this thing. So
Yep.
Cool. Well, right on, man. What else have you got coming up work-wise? Anything interesting?
I'm I have some stuff from home, different clients sending a few things here and there, a song, couple of songs on different records. We're finishing up a couple of projects. There's a project for Warner Chappell, which is like this composer named Lisbeth Scott, who did a film called All My Life, which just came out a few weeks ago. I played on the soundtrack to that, and she's doing a follow-up sort of not new agey, but just like all kind of instrumental, spiritual like songs for them to license into films. And cool. She's an amazing composer, and so we've been doing a lot of stuff with that, and that's finishing up this week. And then Christmas, and then I don't know what's going to happen in January. We'll see. I'm hoping for the best, but set up to hang out and just record from home and be with my family.
Right on. Yeah, and you recently moved too, right? I
mean, we're up in Santa Clarita near Cal Arts and stuff. So we love it. A little nice neighborhood for kids to play. Yeah. A little better than Van.
Yeah, getting out of the valley, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I can relate to that. I mean, we're kind of out on the edge of our own valley out here, but
I thought about you because we were out in Moreno Valley at the West Elm outlet picking up some furniture, and I was like, Carey is pretty close to here. How far are you from?
It's like 20 minutes north of there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just it's right through the hills. Yeah, it is. Woo. Yeah.
It's cool though.
Yeah, we're out here. Well, maybe one day when we get the studio all together and you know, people can hang around other people again. Yeah, that'd be fun to have you out and maybe shoot some more video and do some demo stuff, and
that'd be so fun.
Yeah,
would love that.
Yeah, and then I'll cook some food or something too. So
yeah, bro. Come on.
So all right. Well, thanks, Dan, so much for doing this.
Thank you, Carey.
Sharing the cat-based joy and fun.
Yes.
Yeah, man, we'll be in touch, and best of luck to you with ongoing music adventures and bass playing and tracking and all that stuff. So
thanks, Carey. Thanks for making great stuff, man. So inspiring.
You're very welcome. Thank you. All right. Take care, Dan.
Bud.
All right. See you.
Bye.